Hi friends, I wanted to start this full installation video with a quick review of the SnapNrack top speed mounting system. So it's a pretty minimal system. The pricing is much cheaper than like a rail mount. And first I want to start just by kind of showing you what I did and a quick review. So here in the back on the north side of my house I have horizontally mounted panels. I have 9 here, and one thing to consider with this system, I would use it again. I am recommending it to a few people, and it's worked really well for me. But one thing to consider is that it works with plywood, so this actually drills into plywood, and you don't have to find your rafters. For better or for worse, right? You don't finding rafters that are especially uneven, like they are not on my old roof. It's hard to do, but yeah, plywood might not always be perfectly installed. So your install quality is directly affected by just your roof and how well the plywood is mounted to your rafters. In my case, I didn't even have rafters. It's an old roof where I have 7-inch boards. So I had to take the extra steps of trying to locate the center of my 7-inch boards, which at a time, since I had to try to measure, from the edge of my roof to try to find the center of these boards. But luckily, I had good luck on this side, and I was able to, hit the center, or at least avoid the in-betweens of my 7-inch boards. So let's have a look at my south side. This was my initial practice with this system, and here I use it to mount these 11 panels vertically. So overall, again, positive experience. I would use it again, but for my situation with the 7-inch boards on this full bottom row, I actually ended up hitting an in-between area of my boards, and I ended up going below my roof and running 2x4s in between my rafters, which did add a lot of time. But also the installation kind of, ended up making the mount installation, I think, a lot stronger. I had to get some longer screws to hit the 2x4s properly. But again, overall, I was able to do this installation mostly by myself. Shout out to my friend Alan for a little bit of help. And yeah, I would recommend it again, considering the price and the end result. So yeah, that's just the start review. If you want to see the full step-by-step installation, it's not the top quality video I've ever done. I actually had a cold during the video, but I think it should give you an idea, and it might help you avoid some mistakes you might have made otherwise. All right, good luck. Hi friends, today I wanted to make a video to document my solar panel installation on the roof. And for this installation I used the top speed mounting system by SnapNrack. So I've already installed 11 panels and I have 9 left to go. So I just wanted to kind of document all the steps I took, in case it might be helpful for somebody, or I might want to do this again in a few years, and I want to remind myself. So let me start with the basic installation of this SnapNrack system. So one of the big advantages of the system is that you don't have to find the rafters, and this is one of the big reasons I decided to go with it. It's intended to be drilled straight into the plywood layer on your roof, and there's sealant that you're using to try to help it make it extra water resistant. And as far as I know, all of the wind tests and all those kind of things have been very successful. But as some people have noted, of course, it depends on how well your plywood is attached to your rafters. If the roof isn't put together very well, then that's of course going to jeopardize any installation that's relying on the plywood. Also, one thing to note is that not every roof is going to have plywood as the top layer. As is the case with my roof, I have boards that are 7 inches wide and they have a gap in between. So using this system actually, adds an extra challenge, because you have to identify the center of the boards, or you're going to drill in between the boards, and that's also not going to be structurally sound. The manufacturer does explicitly talk about having a plywood layer, but again, I still decided to go with this option, and I did come into some trouble actually with installation of my initial 11 panels, where I did hit the center of the boards, and what I had to do was I had to add extra 2x4s in between my rafters for support, and then I ended up using longer screws to actually attach these to the 2x4s I attached to my rafters, and that gave it a very extra strong installation that I was kind of happy with, because it also added structural integrity to my rafters and my roof in general. Now in the back section, I'm going to use these to install it above a covered patio, and I don't have access to the rafters because there's plywood. I mean, it's a finished wall, so there's actual drywall and stuff, and I don't have access. So I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I hit the center of the boards when I'm attaching the panels. And again, this is my first attempt at doing this blindly without having access to the underside of the roof. But I've learned some stuff, and I'm still deciding to go ahead with this installation. Okay, so let me just walk you through, well, the first step of any really solar installation is deciding where you want to put your panels. So of course, I don't want to go into too much detail. I want to stay on the track of just using this SnapNrack system. But you're going to want to be, giving favor to the south-facing part of your roof, because that's going to produce the most electricity. And then also you want to consider the tilt of your roof, which will vary depending on where you are. I think the ideal tilt for Phoenix, Arizona is about 30-something degrees. Either way, I didn't go for the ideal tilt, but you want to get as close to that as possible. Stop. Okay, so I'm just going to show you where I'm going to install these panels, and it's going to be right on top of this covered patio. So this is actually the north part of my roof, but the south part has a lot of shading issues. There's a lot of trees there, and I already utilized the top portion of my roof, so I'm just going to start putting stuff on the south side and kind of gauge how much sun I'm getting. And being in Phoenix, there is an abundant amount of sun, so I'm still confident to get a good amount of electricity, but the estimated loss is about 30% on the north side compared to the south side. So again, you're going to want to check your regulations if you're trying to get this permitted, which I will at some point. And I think it's pretty common to try to position your panels around 3 feet away from the edge, which is what I'm going for here. And that's largely geared at giving firefighters space to walk around, especially if your roof is full of panels. Okay, I'm trying not to go off on the tangents here because there's a lot to installations, but I'm going to try to just concentrate on the actual mounting, which is all that we're talking about at the moment. So as you can see, I already found the positioning for my first SnapNrack mount, and then yeah, I did actually measure exactly, you know, where the centers of the boards are. So I made sure that it's in between the boards, and I'm going to kind of assume that it's gonna stay the same way as it goes forward. Of course, that assumption might be off, but I'm going to do them one by one, and then if I come across issues, then I'm going to deal with them accordingly. There's a bit of wiggle room, so I might be able to slightly move something up or down if I notice that I am hitting a middle or I'm not getting a bite on the screw. All right, so I think I'm going to start with just drilling this first one and go from there. Okay, so I have the position for my first SnapNrack mount. I'm just going to show you real quick how I'm going to install that and talk about it a little bit. So this is the first mount position, and I picked it because on my panel the bracket mounting is supposed to be 16.5 inches approximately from the side of it, and then I want to have a little bit over 3 feet from the edge, so I have space to walk around there and possibly work on the panels. And again, I have boards. I don't have plywood under here, so I did my best to try to get in the center, or closest to the center that I could, of two boards, 7-inch boards. So I'm not trying to hit the center in between the two boards. So all you really need is an impact drill with a 1/2-inch hex bit, and you need the sealant. So I've seen in a couple of videos, the recommended sealant for this is actually this specific one, and it's kind of like the top tier sealant that's a little pricier than other ones. It's GeoCell 450 roof bonding sealant, and essentially it's pretty much just like tar. So I would protect your hands, protect your legs, because if not, it's going to take a couple days to get all of it off, which I learned the hard way. Alright, so there is a bit of wiggle room. You know, if you do it slightly off, you know, it should be fine, but I would recommend to try as closely as possible to keep everything in a straight line. You know, if you want, maybe do a chalk line, which I kind of attempted unsuccessfully. I just had a new one and it didn't chalk very well. But I'm going to use the my roof topping as a guide, since these shingles they're pretty straight from everything I've seen, and I'm also going to measure from the side before I do any drilling. You know, that's my main concern, is to try to get in the center of the boards, which most people not have that issue. All right, so let's get started. I know it's always a little scary putting holes in your roof, but with this sealant, you know, I think it's going to last essentially as long as the shingles would, from everything I've read and seen. It is pretty much just tar, just like the shingles are. So the idea is you're gonna pump a bunch of sealant into this area, and you're gonna want it to spill out from the little edge when you're sealing it. And also a reminder to make sure that the longer bit is facing towards you, because that's where you're going to want to place the panels. So the first row is going to be all having the longer bit facing towards you, where you will place the panels onto. And that is a requirement. And I would also tighten this up before you put it in, but you can kind of sneak in there with a hand wrench and tighten it if you had to afterwards as well. Alright, so you definitely don't want to be cheap with the sealant on this. I'm going to pile it in there, nice and thick. sticking out, it's fine. It's a little messy and it's not the funnest thing, but comparing this to trying to find your rafters, for me this is hands down. I mean, this seems much easier, and I for sure prefer this method thus far from everything I've seen, not having done the other method. Okay. So I had a little pilot hole in there. I want to make sure I hit, so that's why I extended one of the screws. Kind of plop it down, and first I'm going to drill in the one screw on the side. Try to put even downward pressure. Then I'm going to try to do as straight as possible on the other side over here. Yeah, as you push down one screw, the other screws will kind of, everything will get pushed down, so you have to just kind of keep leveling them out until they're tight. Since the shingles, they have a little bit of give on them. It's pretty close to the side here, but it's looking pretty good. I'm getting a lot of good sealant flooding out on the sides. So pretty confident it'll keep a nice, a tight seal. And you can also put a little bit of sealant on the top there if you want to be extra cautious. So I do. Top there. All right, that's the first one. It's a bit close to the bottom of this next shingle, but again, I was kind of limited in trying to keep it close to the center of my board. So pretty happy with this first one. And I'm going to measure the next ones off of the first one, and I'll show you as I make more progress. Alright, so I have the first two mounts drilled in, mounted. So at this point, with the first two drilled in, I like to attach the first panel just to make sure everything is kind of looking like I want it to look, and just to keep in mind all the wire management that needs to happen, so I don't make things harder for myself after I install multiple panels next to each other. So let me go ahead and get the first panel set up for placing on the roof. All right, let's take a look at my panel and discuss a little bit wire management. So I'm going to mount my panel horizontally, and I'm going to connect my panels in series. So I'm going to have basically 4 panels connected together. So there's going to be a panel on the left of this one and a panel on the top. So I want to make sure that the cables are placed accordingly, so I'll be able to connect them up with the positives to negatives as you need to do in series. So before you mount, you definitely want to consider those kind of things, because you might make a mistake and you might not have access to your cables as you need And then you might have to just move some panels around, which wouldn't be the end of the world, since again these mounts, none of these mounts are permanent. But just in a matter of saving time, I would for sure do as much as you can on the ground, as much planning as you can, so you know exactly what you're trying to do when you finish. So with these SnapNrack mounts, what you're going to do is install 2 of them before you actually take your panel to the roof. So the initial ones that we mounted, they're going to be used for the bottom. You're going to get your panel on the roof and place it onto the mount, and the top will already have 2 other mounts attached to it, and it'll be ready for drilling. So let me get those attached and let's get this panel up there so we can see how it looks. I'm going to briefly just talk about some of the things I'm using on my panels. So I'm using the TIGO panel disconnects. That's actually a requirement within the electrical code. And I'm also using these little clips that are great for wire management. They have a really tight piece that you can use a little hammer to get them onto your panels or slide it on there. And you can use as much of those as you want, just to try to manage all the different wires that are going to be running from your inverter to your panels, and vice versa. All right, let's attach the mounts to this panel before we get the panel up on the roof. Okay, let's get our mounts attached to this panel. Again, the existing mounts on the roof are going to attach to the bottom. We have 2 of those up, and then we're going to attach the same mounts in a similar location. So we're going to want this pointing towards the bottom, and this time you're going to use the smaller piece because the bigger piece is going to be used in case you want to mount panels on top of your installation, which I do. So you're going to measure your recommended manufacturer's positioning of brackets. In this case, there's already a hole here that can be used to mount, using screws or something of that nature. So I'm going to position it approximately at the screw, and from what I measured, it's going to be a bit past the screw, so I'm going to just use that as a guide. So I'm going to make that nice and snug. Let's get the other one and do the same thing on this side. Alright, so at this point, this panel is ready to be placed on the roof. And I'm going to use my little sliding strategy I've been using, which might be a little trickier since these brackets are on the sides. So I'm going to attempt to slide this panel onto the roof using like a little blanket. Which I'll show you how I do that. Alright, let's give it a try. Alright, let me show you my setup for sliding the panels on the roof. Getting a bit too old for this shit, but hey, body still works. So what I do is I have a little table placed on the bottom. I put the panel on top of it, and on the roof I have a blanket ready for the panel to slide on. So I'm going to kind of tilt the panel, slide it up, and then I'm going to use a little ladder to get an extra height. And this worked really well when the brackets were on the bottom, but I got a feeling having the brackets on the side like this, excuse me, it's going to create extra friction, and might give me some trouble, but let's see. Alright, that's a decent angle, I guess. And all this stuff is much easier if you have a buddy. If you have a buddy to work with. My buddy is MIA today, but he's already helped me a lot before, so no hard feelings. Let's get this up there while I cuff it up a little bit. Brackets on the side definitely create a bit of friction, but if you kind of tilt it to the side, it still works well. So yeah, if your roof is low enough like mine, hopefully this method could be useful for you. And then from here, I'm going to kind of grab the panel, make my way over to the newly installed brackets and place it on top of there. I guess I'll film that as well. I'll take this thing to the roof. Let's go. Alright, so this is the part that'll definitely be more helpful to have an extra hand. But I'm going to kind of grab the panel and clumsily get it in its place. I was very careful with them when I first got them, but they feel tougher than a lot of other things I've worked with. Grab it like this, place it on the top of it. Pretty good. Next I'm gonna do some measuring to make sure that the second piece can be drilled into the middle of the boards again, and then I'll get the second part mounted, and that'll be the installation of the first panel, which is often one of the tougher ones. Planning and everything done. Alright, so let's look at the mounting bracket on the side that's already attached to your panel when you bring it up. So as per instructions, you never want to have the mount be kind of in between your shingles, as this one is. You want to have it completely on one shingle, and that's one of the big reasons that this one is designed to move when you unscrew this screw right here. And you can position it exactly where it makes sense to, well, within the limits of the bracket. So in my case, I did some measuring, and the board, the middle of the board is my best estimate is here and here. So I'm kind of just shooting for the center of that, and in this case, unfortunately, it's kind of towards the end of the capability of the bracket. So I'm not going to have much wiggle room if I want to move stuff around later. So I might move it slightly forward, because I found that it can be very helpful to have a bit of wiggle room in case you want to move things later. So once it's in the position that you want it, we're going to tighten this back up. And then it's going to be ready for mounting. Again, it's slightly closer to the edge of the board than I would like, and I am estimating, but yeah, I'm a bit limited, unfortunately. I was hoping I'd be able to get closer to the center, but this should still work, so I'm going to go ahead with this and move forward, and I'll do the same for the bracket next to it, since I'm again assuming that the boards are going pretty parallel to each other and are consistent. And if that's not the case, then I'm going to, try to figure out some other solutions, hopefully nothing too drastic. Okay, I had a camera problem. It stopped on me, unfortunately, so I missed some of the installation that I wanted to show you guys. So what I did was I had to pick up this pan on the side and fill the gaps in with sealant. I also marked out the edges with chalk to be able to make sure I can get it back in the same place. And I'm on to drilling in the second mount. Alright, I think I'm pretty happy with this mount so far. Just grateful that I was able to locate the boards correctly, and hopefully I'll keep being able to do that going forward, since I'm planning to have more panels going on this side. And eventually I'll get to my roof, or I will have access to get to the underside if I need to add some 2x4s. Let's move on. Alright, once you have that part done, you're going to want to just tighten up this side of it. And if you do see gaps, then again you should have some wiggle room that you should be able to move, slide everything back by just loosening up that side. So again, that's why I always like to stay away from the edges, to make sure you have some wiggle room if you need it. Alright, I'm going to move on. I think I will mount the one behind it next. This part got cut off before. I wanted to show you the process of putting the sealant and screwing in at this half of the panel. Alright, so I moved and positioned the mount in the place where I think there's going to be closer to the center of the board. Unfortunately, I'm so far away at this point, then there might have been some discrepancy, so I'm just hopeful that I'll hit a good board and I'll get a good bite with the screws. So I'm adding some chalk just to keep track of where my brackets are positioned in case stuff gets moved around during this process. So this process can get a little tricky. I'm coming to the end of one of my tubes. So before I start, I'm actually going to swap out for a new tube instead of trying to do that in the middle of this process. And then I'll finish off this tube on a new installation. See, this is my first time actually using this kind of reusing one mount for two panels, and it's pretty cool. It saves a lot of time. My other installation was just one row using two mounts on each side, so I didn't get the savings of reusing time savings and money savings of reusing some of the mounts. So I got a nice fresh tube of sealant. I'm ready to start this process. And again, there's a chance I might be hitting the center of the board. There's a chance I will get in the middle of them. So I'm just hopeful that it's going to get good. If not, I might consider finishing the installation and try to first, you're going to want to pick up the panel on your knees, get comfortable, try to get close to the center. With one hand, you're going to lift it up, and you're going to fill your mount with sealant. Just remember, use as much sealant stuff in there. You want it leaking out. We don't care about it getting a bit messy. We don't want any leaks. Give it to breathe. If you get tired, you can rest on your knees at any point. This stuff is like tar, it doesn't really hurt much from my experience. For a second, switch hands. The sun is going down soon, so I just want to finish this last panel and go up here since it's Friday. Usually Cali sober on the weekdays. That means you don't highly recommend it. Friday. I'm excited for the weekend. I'm excited to make progress on this solar install. Right now I'm generating about half of my power. With these north-facing panel, I hope to add at least 25-30% of that. And then maybe I'll put some foods to help that. Good. There. Try to use your chalk guides. drilling, I recommend picking it up a bit and pushing it. It's touching the bracket. And you can even tighten that the bracket first before we start drilling, since there might be movement. Alright, here's the moment of truth. If the first one bites, most likely the whole bite. If not, then we'll have to pivot. So you get the idea. It's looking good so far. Hopefully I didn't jinx it with that comment. Tightening screw by screw because the bracket gets tighter and tighter. I think I mentioned that before. So when it's tight enough, you can see the plastic gasket kind of bulge out a little bit. But I've been putting so much sealant that often I'll see the sealant leak out, which I'm completely fine with. I'd rather overdo the sealant than underdo it. And yeah, looks like this one bit. It's a Friday miracle. We got 3 done for today. I think that's a good start for this portion. I might go just chill out. Alright. Hopefully I got that on video this time. And I did. So the last part of the installation is attaching these skirts at the beginning of your panels. And these are intended to help ground your panels. So instead of this as an alternative, you could just connect the 2 end rows, you know, with a grounding wire. And after considering the cost and everything, I probably would have done that the second time around. So I would look into that if I were you. But if you decide to add this skirt just for a bit more refined look, and also, you know, to use them to ground, I just want to point out a few things. So one of the big things to consider is that you're gonna need to have, you know, one skirt connecting 2 panels, and that's not always going to be possible just with the mounts that you used. So you're gonna have to also purchase these in-between mounts, which can be used as this one has right here, to make sure that one mount is connected to 2 panels to you know, to make sure you're grounding the panel properly, and also just to add strength to it. So yeah, the most annoying thing about these skirts is that they use the same clamp as the panel. So depending on the size of your panel, the depth, I guess you would call it, right, like this right here. So my panel is 35 millimeters, and what I had to order was these 32 millimeter spacers, and yeah, I had a hard time finding what the correct spacer would be. I'm not sure if I missed some documentation, but yeah, it wasn't really available from what I could tell. And these 32 millimeter spacers were not even sold by Signature Solar, so I had to get them on like eBay. But yeah, so if you want to use that as an indicator for your stuff, you know, mine is 35 millimeters, and I had to use a 32 millimeter spacer to have the clamp, you know, clamped down correctly to tighten my panel and also the skirt at the same time. And yeah, these spacers just kind of go on here, and you can push it in with a hammer to make it nice and tight. And that is a quality install, but it feels like that piece is certainly annoying. I feel like maybe they could have had a solution where you have multiple spacers that you would use, you know, at the same time for thinner panels or something of that nature. Because yeah, I literally ordered like 120 other spacers, maybe like 3 or 4 different sizes, to try to pinpoint this one, which wasn't even available on Signature Solar. So I might have to return those. So yeah, just wanted to include that for completeness. And again, having done this again and considering the pricing of the skirts and spacers, I would just probably connect these 2 end panels, you know, with a nice solid ground wire. Leave it at that. And also you would have, you know, some better airflow. This does prevent airflow a bit. But having said that, yeah, I think my wife probably prefers this look. I'm a little less partial to just aesthetics, but yeah, it's a for sure plus in that regard.